Today, on Here is the Horror.
I had no choice but to kill them. It was a small price to pay to live forever.
Hello, and welcome to Here is the Horror. I'm Adam.
And I'm Daniel.
And this is our 7th episode of Here is the Horror, where we'll be going over our recent horror news, and then moving on to this episode's main topic, which is going to be Puppet Master, the 1989 film.
It's a classic.
It'll be nice getting back into movies after our little Silent Hill stint. I'm still upset that we didn't get to Silent Hill 4 in time, but I'm sure we'll get back to that later at some future date. Speaking of recent horror, most of what I've watched isn't very recent. I'm going to have to make sure I do better on that next week because I feel like that's been becoming a trend for me. But everything I've watched since our last episodes has kind of been in service of this episode. It's all stuff that people that worked on this worked on prior, so a bunch of 70s and 80s stuff.
Ooh, probably some good stuff in there.
What about you?
Recently, I watched A Spiral. It was released to Shudder in September. It's a 2019 film.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that other than that it's the latest in the Saw series, technically.
No. This is
a different one.
It's called It's nothing to do with the Saw series. It's without giving anything away. It's a psychological thriller.
I was gonna say I didn't think the Saw one was out yet, but okay.
Yeah, it's got, the acting's really good. There's a nice atmosphere. It's kind of a fun guessing game as the movie goes on. I was a little disappointed by the lack of exposition. And though I love exposition in this film, I found that even by normal standards, you weren't really given enough to know what was going on when it's all said and done. I finally watched Creep and Creep 2. That's 2014 and 2017 respectively. I've seen a lot of people herald these films over the last couple of years, but the synopsis never really did anything for me. But after I watched them, I fell in love with both of them. It's a heartwarming tale of a man played by actor Mark Duplass who just wants a friend. I put it off forever, but now that I've seen it, it's great. I also watched 1987's The Video Dead again. That movie has some weird charm to me where I have to watch it a couple of times a year. It claims that it's an unintentional or that it's an intentional comedy horror, but I think it's just so bad that it's good comedy. There's some interesting ideas in it, but there's also zombie hiding in a washing machine and extreme toothbrushing. The main character at one part mentions that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is his favorite movie, and he's seen it a total of 6 times.
Amazing.
I've seen 28 Days Later probably 200. Other than that, I received my copy of Tales of Evil. It's a board game centering around the Pizza and Investigation gang.
I'm sorry, the Pizza and Investigation?
Yeah.
Okay.
It definitely takes a lot of nods from Stephen King's It. It's a board game about a group of kids that basically they have to solve these mysteries of this weird stuff going on in their town. The players are referred to as Braves, and it's kind of like almost like a choose-your-own-adventure book, because the scenario book, depending on what happens, you may go to this paragraph rather than this paragraph. So there's not only different branching ways to progress through the scenario, there's multiple endings. It's a great theme, and the components are amazing.
So it's kind of scenario-based, like Mansions of Madness or House on Haunted Hill.
Yes, and the adventure creator is due sometime around the end of October, I believe. That will actually let you craft your own scenarios to share with other players. Antonia Ferrara was the primary designer of this game, but he also co-designed Last Friday and Stay Away. I've really wanted to play Last Friday, but it requires at least 2 people. And one other fun thing about this game is there's something called the fusion system. So you may come to a point in the game where it says, oh no, the lights go out, you need to find a lighter and strike it. Well, in real life, when it's a fusion event, you have to hope that somebody sitting at your table has a lighter that they can pick up and flick and light in order to get the positive outcome in that. There's a lot of cool little things in the fusion system, and I can't wait to see the kind of stuff people come up with once the adventure creator is released.
Sounds like an experienced player would just start bringing a backpack full of the known common tools to each gameplay session if you had a regular gaming group.
Oh yeah, but when I finally get around to actually playing it, it's going to be a blast.
I guess I haven't really watched it technically, but I guess you and I should have both gotten our Friday the 13th Deluxe box sets by now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably be digging into the Friday the 13th Part 3 3D tomorrow, maybe.
Ooh.
And maybe I'll finally give the reboot or remake film another watch as well. My memory of it's pretty murky because I think I was passing out the whole time I tried to watch it before.
I thought I'd seen that with you, but I think it was your brother I saw it with in theaters.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see it in theaters. I believe one of the times I tried to watch it, I was with you, but somehow at both times I sat down to watch it, I was horribly sleep deprived.
I will say that is the coolest opening, in my opinion, of any of the Friday the 13th films.
Oh, yeah, I have made it through the opening. I remember that, and that's pretty good.
That whole, fake out cast and everything, I loved it. It was crazy. And Derek Mears makes an excellent Jason. But that's about all I've got for things that I've been into recently.
Okay. Well, it started out as me just doing research for Puppet Master for today's episode and looking into stuff that people that had worked on it had done. And so I ended up watching 1979's Tourist Trap.
Oh, that's a good one.
I had kind of mixed feelings about it. It had a lot of good stuff in it, but it didn't really mesh together for me. That's directed by David Schmoller, the director of Puppet Master. It's his first movie right out of college. Apparently his thesis film in college was something called The Spider Will Kill You, which I also watched. It's a short, half-hour thing, very art-housey. But they both just heavily feature mannequins, although I suppose I'm going to give a slight spoiler for Tourist Trap here, but I think that's okay since I watched the trailer for it also, and the trailer just straight out gave away who the killer was in it. It sort of turns out in Tourist Trap it seems like it's like a ghost movie at the start, where the ghosts are mostly manifesting through manipulating mannequins, but then it turns out instead it's psychics telekinetically controlling the mannequins. So that kind of seems to bleed into Puppet Master a bit to me.
Oh, definitely.
These ghostly puppets, but then it turns out to actually be a movie about psychics once we get there. Tourist Trap also had music by Italian composer Pino Donaggio, who composed for stuff you might know like the 1976 Brian De Palma Carrie, and also for Joe Dante's The Howling.
Both great movies.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen some stuff online saying that the music for Puppet Master is actually a synth arrangement that Richard Band and David Schmoller did together, basically making synth arrangements of tracks from the Tourist Trap soundtrack. However, when I went back trying to find where I'd read that, I couldn't relocate the data, so take that with a grain of salt, I guess.
All right.
But as for Tourist Trap itself, it feels kind of dreamy, but also it gets kind of campy and silly at times too. It seems like they were kind of trying to go for a more supernatural Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I think that gritty realness combined with the supernatural elements just made a clash that made it feel campy and silly for a good chunk of it to me. Although there is a lot of nice shots and camera work, and some good acting from characters other than the killer himself when he's in costume. The actor that plays the killer is actually a very good actor, just not when he's portraying the killer.
I think One Dark Night probably did that blend much better with the gritty and the supernatural / psychic.
Yes, one more episode where we mentioned One Dark Night.
It deserves to be mentioned every episode.
I also watched a 1987 film Dolls, which is a Richard Band production by Empire Pictures. Oh, so you've seen this before as well.
Oh, I love Dolls.
Okay, yeah, I loved this one. This one was really good for me.
Which one's your favorite?
What do you mean, which one?
Which doll?
None of them really stood out too much for me. Probably I liked the little ones that were constantly trying to hacksaw the limbs off of people, I guess.
What about the teddy bear?
I mean, that's not really a doll, is it? That's just like a dream sequence.
No, it kills one of her parents.
That's a dream sequence. Or not a dream sequence, but rather it's the little girl, fantasizing when they first pull up to the house.
Oh, yeah.
Confusingly, this one said it had music supervision by Richard Band, who's the brother of Charles Band, the owner of Empire Pictures and Full Moon, and Richard Band composes for a lot of their movies.
And Moonbeam.
Oh, yeah. But it said he just did music supervision for this, and the actual music was by Fusby Morse, who scored Ghoulies 2 also. And while the doll effects for this were done by John and Vivian Bruner, it seems like they did the doll design with it and had a team of Italian puppeteers, and someone named Giancarlo Del Brocco did all the mechanical designs, who he also was the makeup artist for this and on From Beyond and Crawl Space. Crawl Space being another David Schmoller film.
From Beyond is another good one.
Yeah, it's a really good one. But David Allen Productions, who would end up doing the puppets in Puppet Master, they did do stop motion effects for this. David Allen, he did a lot of stop motion. That's kind of his claim to fame.
Occasionally. Sometimes it's a real person's fist. Framed in black.
Yeah, and this one was Dolls, to give it a little bit more pedigree. It was produced by Brian Usna and directed by Stuart Gordon, so that kind of explains why it's such a good film, but I enjoyed this one a lot. This one is almost like it has a very dreamlike vibe also, and it's very campy and comical, but it kind of works with the dreamlike vibe because there's not that gritty realism that Tourist Trap seem to try to have, so this whole movie just has this nice, dreamy, almost fairy tale-like vibe. So everybody is a caricature. Everybody's over the top and exaggerated in the way they behave and act, but it works really good in it. It makes it both very funny and charming to me, so I liked this one.
The old couple was very reminiscent of Toulon to me, the man anyways.
Oh, that old man is actually played by Guy Rolfe, who
would later on
play Andre Toulon in Puppet Master 3, 4, 5 and Retro. Dolls gave me much more Troll vibes than any other movie has given me so far. The first Troll, the good one, not the Troll 2 one that has demolished the first one with its infamous reputation. I think the only other thing I saw, I'm not going to say much about it, but I was checking into Full Moon and saw that they have their own streaming service now where you can access their whole catalog, and they have even some movies you can just watch for free without even joining up to it. Although if you join up to it, you do get a free Puppet Master box set, apparently.
Yeah, Blu-ray box set.
Mm-hmm. So I just watched one of those at random. It was some 2012 film called The Dead Want Women, and it was okay. They also had a movie on there called Corona Zombies, if you want something more topical.
Yes.
But the one I watched, The Dead Want Women, pretty much just seemed like a sort of a budget, almost just felt like an elongated episode of some show, like a Tales from the Dark Side or something. I'm not going to get into the plot too much, but basically just a grisly murder happens, then some girls are cleaning up a house to try to sell it, and they get haunted by the ghosts. It has a lot of strong sexual elements, a lot of nudity, as you'd expect from a D movie like it. It has some makeup effects in it by Tom Devlin, though, who I looked into him and I saw he was credited as a puppeteer on Puppet Master X, although it seems like makeup effects is his main thing. I did see that he owns a Tom Devlin's Monster Museum in Nevada, and that they're doing a Fright Zone event for Halloween, kind of like a haunted house, so that's kind of cool. Although looking more into his catalog, I did see a bunch of art department and prosthetics and makeup effects stuff for porn parodies, so that was a fun rabbit hole to encounter. So you can find more of his work in things like A Wet Dream on Elm Street.
Well, I mean, really, the Full Moon features, the cost that you have to pay for an annual membership is well worth the box set you get for Puppet Master.
Yeah, of course.
So I would look at it basically as paying $60 for a box set of movies I really like, and then getting to watch a whole catalog of other stuff for free for a year.
Yeah, I mean, The Dead Want Women was fine. Just go into it expecting, something shocky. That's basically a feature-length episode of one of those serial horror shows. That wasn't to my review of the streaming service. Obviously Full Moon has that huge enough catalog that I'm sure that's a perfectly good investment.
Subspecies.
But yeah, that pretty much wraps up everything I've been into lately, so I guess we can move on to the news.
There's some pretty interesting horror news over the last couple of weeks when we've been playing catch up. Hammer Films Ultimate Collection is due out to be released November 17th. It's from Mill Creek Entertainment. It's 20 films spanning 3 decades. You're going to get most of the best Hammer films out there.
I assume that's Blu-ray or?
Yeah. Two-Sentence Horror Stories had a season 3 announced. It was renewed back in early September, and production unfortunately got pushed back to 2021 due to COVID-19. Two-Sentence Horror Stories is an anthology series where each one is a 30-minute episode based around the multiple two-sentence horror stories you would find on Reddit or something like that.
Oh, this is stuff like that infamous...
Baby shoes for sale, never worn.
Oh, I was going to say the one that's, the last man in the world sat alone in a room, then heard a knock at the door.
Yes, my particular favorite is, I hear my mom yell at me to come for dinner. As I head out my door, she grabs my arm saying, "Don't go in the kitchen, baby. That's not me."
Yeah, that's probably a better one, yeah.
The Blumhouse Amazon collaboration has started releasing. We've got Evil Eye, Black Box, The Lie, and Nocturne available on Amazon Prime right now. The collaboration is supposed to release a total of 8 films throughout the course of the end of this year, and I believe we're going to get the next 4 in 2021. It's very reminiscent to the Blumhouse Hulu collaboration for Into the Dark. I haven't got a chance to watch any of them yet, but most of what Blumhouse does, there's usually something good.
Yeah, I'm almost, it seems like Blumhouse has really been ramping up lately, or maybe it's just because of doing this show I'm suddenly aware of just how much they do, but...
Blumhouse and A24 are definitely forces to be reckoned with right now. The Stand got a full trailer released. It looks incredible. Skarsgård looks to make a great Randall Flagg, though it's going to be really hard to top Jamie Sheridan's performance from the original miniseries, just because I personally think he did a great job as Randall Flagg / the Dark Man. I'm really looking forward to that. Shudder has surpassed 1 million subscribers, so congratulations, Shudder. You're definitely deserving of it. Warner Brothers has launched the Horror Icon Shop. It's an official merchandise shop that is going to run year-round, and it's going to be the properties Warner Brothers owns. It's going to be horror merchandise focused on that. Everything in that store is going to be geared towards horror movie fans, which is pretty cool. Dreadx Collection 3 got announced.
Oh.
It's supposed to be out before the end of October.
Does this one have 13 games in it?
I don't know.
I just say because Dreadx had 10 and Dreadx 2 had 12 to be 10 plus 2.
Could definitely. One last little bit of news I have. The 90s style FMV slasher game, Bloody Service, comes out next month. From what I've gathered, you're a waiter at a country club, and there is a party, and a huge amount of chaos ensues after that. I've purposely tried to learn as little plot-wise as possible because I'm really interested in this, and I enjoy being surprised.
Does it seem like it's specifically trying to pay homage to Resident Evil or Silent Hill like a lot of them do, or does it seem like it's just doing its own similar thing?
No, it's going to be more like Night Trap, The Seventh Guest.
Oh, that kind. Oh, you meant live action FMV game.
Like The 11th Hour. Night Trap is a particularly infamous one for the Sega Mega CDs. Brain Dead 13, Wing Commander, stuff like that, yeah. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's probably going to be designed to have a bit of schlock in it if it's truly going for that 90s style, but that doesn't bother me.
I question if it's possible to make one of those that doesn't have that.
One of my favorite games ever, Daggerfall. As much as I love that game, the opening FMV is just so cheesy.
It's just something about when they're looking at the camera speaking directly to you. It just automatically does it.
Rest well this night, for tomorrow you sail for the kingdom of Daggerfall.
Now I want to play Realms of the Haunting.
Was Realms of the Haunting, I watched you play, where the guy sits down in the chair and it burns the pentagrams?
Yeah. It's really good in the early game where it's just like a horror game and you have almost no weapons and you're just sneaking around and there's lightning and ghosts. But then once you get like, I don't know, half an hour to an hour in, it's just a first-person shooter and you're just blowing things away.
Yeah, I remember you let me play it one time, and at that point in the game, I believe a sword was all I had, and a suit of armor was coming after me, and you were trying to tell me, Daniel, stop. You're not meant to fight that right now. You're meant to run from it. It's a suit of armor, and all you have is a sword.
Or I think that was maybe one of those like weird Bioshock-looking zombies the game has.
Yeah, so that's, I remember I died because I didn't listen to you. So, live you learn. That's about all I have for the news, though.
Right. Well, I saw the second season of Eli Roth's History of Horror debuted on AMC. We still just have the season 1 on Shudder. And I know the Amnesia series, which is pretty popular for all the like homebrews and custom games people made on the original, the Dark Descent. The third entry in that series is finally coming out, Amnesia Rebirth. That's scheduled for October 20th on PC and PlayStation 4. Back on Blumhouse, I saw that they have a sequel to The Craft coming out called The Craft Legacy that's going to be released on various on-demand services on the 28th of October.
I saw that too. Of course, with something like that, I hear really divisive opinions.
Yeah.
Everyone is either excited about it or they hate it. I'm kind of looking forward to it.
I'm kind of neutral, but it seemed like something that a lot of people might be interested in hearing about.
Well, I'd much rather have them try something new with an IP and fail than to just let the IP stagnate and never try anything new with it.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, the Nightmare on Elm Street remake was disappointing. I'm not going to argue. It was way too reliant on jump scares, and it used way too much CGI. But I actually really enjoyed Haley as Freddy Krueger. I thought he made a good Freddy Krueger. A lot of people think Robert Englund is the only person that could ever play him, and I can understand that. He's a wonderful Freddy, but, even in a bad remake like that, there's good things.
Speaking of remakes, there's also the Robert Zemeckis adaptation of Roald Dahl's The Witches coming to HBO Max on October 22nd.
Yeah, that one I'm not happy about.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the original.
Me too.
The trailer for this one didn't really do much for me, but I don't know.
The mice aren't even stop motion. They're CGI.
Yeah, the trailer had a few good shots in it, but it looked like they were just like redoing shots that were in the existing live-action adaptation.
Yeah, except there seems to be an extra mouse.
Yeah. In part, I really just wanted to mention it because it's being done by Robert Zemeckis, and interestingly, when I was looking into David Schmoller, the director for Puppet Master, he said that when he was going to film school, it was at the same time as Robert Zemeckis, and that Robert Zemeckis won their film competition, and he was the runner-up with his The Spider Will Kill You film.
Ah.
Right. Just because we finished covering Silent Hill 1 through 3 recently, I thought I should go ahead and mention the Silent Hill content added to Dead by Daylight. Obviously, it's been added to it for a couple weeks now, but they are adding Sybil Bennett as a playable character this week.
Game version or the movie version?
Game version. It looks like all the Silent Hill content added to Dead by Daylight's the game version.
Man, I love the first Silent.
You can play as Heather Mason or Sybil Bennett. The stage is the school from Silent Hill 1, and of course the monster is the Executioner.
Pyramid Head.
Pyramid Head, yes. They call him the Executioner, which I appreciate, actually.
Phallus knife.
Speaking of games in Silent Hill, Bloober Team, who developed the Layers of Fear series and the 2019 Blair Witch game, their game The Medium is set to release on December 10th. I just wanted to mention this because obviously I'm always hyped for new survival horror games coming out, but that game has, I'm going to butcher this name, but Arkadisas Rakowski, who did the music for some of the Bloober Team's earlier work. He's doing most of the music for the game, but similar to Silent Hill, it has in Otherworld you switch to, and in The Medium, whenever you go to the Otherworld, the music there is going to be done by Akira Yamaoka, the composer for Silent Hill.
Well, I will say I've played the Blair Witch game, played the first Layers of Fear, have the second one. I just haven't gotten around to playing it yet. They are both great games. Layers of Fear is one of the few video games I've ever played in my life that legitimately creeped me out while I was playing it. It's very atmospheric. It's very easy to immerse yourself in the game. Play it with a set of stereo headsets, and it's amazing. I literally had moments where I wanted to look over my shoulder playing that game.
Yeah, I haven't played any of those, or either of those actually, so I should probably check that out. One last Silent Hill tangential thing is Good Smile is doing a re-release of 2015's Pyramid Head and Bubblehead Nurse figures. Those are going to re-release on July 2021, but they're currently available for pre-order on Good Smile if you want some good high-quality figures of those. Continuing from the video game tangential things. So obviously we've had a ton of Resident Evil movies at this point, but they're finally doing a relaunch of that series, or a reboot, set to come out in 2021, directed by Johannes Roberts, who did The Strangers Pray at Night, and they've said it's going to be a new universe inspired by storylines and characters from Capcom's classic Resident Evil games. Sounds like it's going to have elements of Resident Evil 1 and 2 and characters from them. Whether or not it will drastically reinterpret them,
Hopefully this one's actually based off the games.
I'm hoping. That said, if you are a fan of the existing Resident Evil film franchise, they are releasing a 4K Ultra HD collection on November 17th that has all of the live-action films.
If I zone out, I can enjoy those films. If I ignore Resident Evil connotation, they're not great movies, but they're not horrible movies. I have to look at them in a certain light.
They're pretty horrible to me, but I didn't see any of the later ones, honestly.
I've seen all of them, and I'll rewatch them occasionally. It's mainly how horribly they get some of the characters. Some of the characters that are from the actual games are done well, but a lot of them are just horrible.
Well, I think past the second movie, that's all kind of out the window. I mean, any reference to the games is just sort of homage at that point.
No, I mean, they bring in Las Plagas without any reason. They just magically appear in later films, including the Executor from Resident Evil 5, who gets killed by shotgun shells filled with silver dollars. Not because they're silver dollars, just because for some reason Alice was making shotgun shells and filling them with coins.
Well, some dreaded horrible day we'll have to get around to having an episode about those films. I only had one other piece of news that's kind of related to today's episode, which is that WRWTFWW Records is releasing a limited edition vinyl soundtracks for some full moon features.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, so if you've ever wanted a colored vinyl with the soundtrack for Troll, Ghoulies, or Terror Vision, those are going to be available on November 20th. Those are all composed by Richard Band, of course. And they also have some Empire Pictures t-shirts and sweatshirts on their site right now that you can get too. So you might want to go check those out. Again, that's WRWTFWW Records. I have no idea what it stands for. We release WTF Worldwide Records? I don't know. Alright, but that wraps up everything I've got for the news, so sounds like we're ready to move on to reanimating some puppets.
Alright.
Alright, so Puppet Master. This was a 1989 film done by Full Moon Features. This was their first film after the previous studio owned by the same man, Charles Band, Empire Pictures, had collapsed due to some debt issues. So they reopened as Full Moon Features, or I think they were Full Moon Productions at that time, actually, and switched to being US-based. And they partnered with Paramount Pictures and Pioneer Home Entertainment to do Puppet Master, which was originally filmed to be a theatrical movie, but VHS was really just blowing up at that time, and they decided they could probably make more profit just going straight to video.
Yeah, and Charles Band, he was responsible for a lot of stuff. Later divisions like Moonbeam Entertainment or Moonbeam Films, they were responsible for Prehysteria. Under Empire, we got Reanimator and Ghoulies.
Yeah, they kind of seem like they had, eventually had a whole bunch of sub-studios that specialized on different things. Like, they had Monster Island Entertainment doing, kaiju films, and Moonbeam, like I said, did Prehysteria. And
Family films.
Yeah. And they had Edge Entertainment and Torchlight. I don't know what they did, but yeah, they had a ton of that. I also, while looking into this, I discovered that Full Moon didn't make, but they distributed Freeway 2. I didn't even know there was a Freeway 2.
I mean, you could go on and on about their releases. They even have, newer franchises that have picked up and become really popular. Things like Ginger Dead Man, Demonic Toys, Subspecies, Trancers.
Maybe it would be prudent at some point to just have an episode specifically just about the life and evolution and times of Full Moon, or maybe just Charles Band and or Richard Band. But
your favorite zombie movie was done by them too. The Dead Hate the Living.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. But just focusing on Puppet Master, 1989 film, like I said, not to be confused with the 1994 film The Puppet Masters, based on the Robert Heinlein novel.
Yeah, that's good in its own way.
But the story for this film was done by Charles Band and Kenneth J Hall. Charles Band, of course, is just the owner of the studio. My understanding is that he was not very involved in any of the movies. He mostly just pitched posters and titles to studios. Then once they agreed to bankroll it, then afterwards they'd find writers to write something based off the poster. And Kenneth J Hall, who was also credited on the story, he is primarily a special effects guy. He was a puppeteer on Ghoulies 1. He came in last second on that, but he was more involved in the creation of the puppets in Ghoulies 2. He also worked on Critters. Saw an interview with him. He came in late on that, but he was in charge of doing all the hair for the Critters and came up with how to do that. He would later on go on to be a lab tech on Puppet Master 4 and 5. He wrote Dr. Alien for Empire in 1988. But while he did the original script for this, it ended up being rewritten a lot. The credits for the movie say the screenplay is by Joseph G. Collodi, but that's actually just a pseudonym for David Schmoller, the director, referencing Carlo Collodi, the creator of Pinocchio. But apparently David Schmoller he didn't have a very favorable opinion of Charles Band's studio, and he pretty much had it as a requirement that anything he directs, he was going to have to be able to rewrite. So I'm assuming that's why you have Tourist Trap having a psychic behind the scenes and this having all the psychic elements. Maybe not, I don't know. I can only speculate on what things he changed and which things he didn't. I know a little bit more about that, but we can talk about that later. And puppet effects by David Allen Productions, who I mentioned earlier, and music composed by Richard Band.
Charles Band's brother, and some other notable things. He did the music for Reanimator, Castle Freak, From Beyond. He even worked later on shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Walker, Texas Ranger.
I did not know that, but...
And Reanimator and From Beyond, Castle Freak, those all have excellent scores. Very fitting for the films. They're very atmospheric. And if I'm honest, what he did on Puppet Master is very iconic for me. I love the theme to this film. It makes me feel like I'm sitting in like 1920s carnival waiting for a puppet show to start.
Yeah, I think Richard Band usually does pretty good work. Even like as a kid, I really liked his music, Control, a ton, but Puppet Master's got some really good music too, but especially that main theme.
I do think it's important to note, though this was the first Puppet Master film released, chronologically it's the 6th film.
Yeah, this franchise is kind of all over the place with its timeline. Any site I've gone to that's dedicated to the Puppet Master series, even just the Wikipedia, has charts breaking down the timeline of where these movies fit with each other chronologically.
Yeah, one of the first kills in the film is contradicted in Puppet Master 3.
Yeah, well, I mean, despite the chronology charts, the consistency and plot elements between these movies is pretty all over the place. But fortunately, that's a lot of baggage that Puppet Master 1 in a vacuum when it first came out didn't have to deal with.
Puppet Master Legacy tried to fix the continuity, but I don't like to talk about Puppet Master Legacy.
Well, let's talk about Puppet Master then.
Well, this is the one that started it all, developed a strong cult following, and it led to 11 more films, with more on the way. This movie would feature Blade, Pinhead, Tunneler, Leech Woman, Genji, Shredder Khan, Jester. My favorite puppet is noticeably absent from this film, despite it taking place after Puppet Master 3.
I think the fact that you opened with listing off which puppets in the series are in this film highlights something I've noticed a lot when looking at other people talking about this film, which is most got into the Puppet Master franchise, then went back to watch the first one, and then they were disappointed with how little the puppets were actually in it. Obviously, when Puppet Master 1 came out on its own, that wasn't really a factor, because people didn't have that expectation. Because while this series would eventually go on to be a sort of semi-slasher series using the puppets as the vehicle for the murders, this first movie is really not that. This is more of almost a gothic horror murder mystery set in a hotel, and the puppets are just the instrument the killer uses so that they can delay revealing who the killer actually is until the finale.
Well, and this one too seems to be one of the movies that gives the puppets a bit more personality, in my opinion. They all have their individual quirks and so forth, like Jester, spinning his head when he's trying to decide on an emotion, or Six Shooters, they all have those ticks, but like the scene in the film when Blade is looking through a keyhole and he's disappointed in one room, but then he goes to another room and sees the sexual encounter. His face already looks like he's smiling, but then his little spike eyes like poke out and he's like he's excited. And I feel like with all the puppets in this one, it tended to give them a bit more personality than what we'd see in some of the other films.
Yeah, I guess so. All except Tunneler. Tunneler doesn't really get fleshed out or do much of anything other than run his drill into people.
I think that's all Tunneler has ever done in any Puppet Master movie. Pretty much 90% of Tunneler's screen time is him running bent over like Ram Man.
Well, speaking of characterization, I think the characterization for the human characters in this one is also surprisingly good compared to most of the rest of the series. I guess we can get to that in a second, but speaking of that sequence with Blade you were just talking about, so yeah, this movie opens at the Bodega Bay Inn in California in 1939, which is amusingly all the exterior shots of the hotel are just a small prop of a hotel suspended to look like it's big over the cliff.
And also 2 years before Puppet Master 3 takes place.
Yeah, I'm trying to not hold any of that against this movie. It's not this movie's fault that future movies couldn't keep consistency with it.
I just wanted to mention it. It does have a nice opening.
Yeah, it has a prolonged first-person scene of Blade trying to beat the Black Hats to Toulon. They have a lot of fun camera work in there of just sort of using the Foley to add grunts, and as the camera like slides across the top of a suitcase, or I like the part where he climbs up a piano just to run across the keys, then back down the piano.
I only have one issue with the opening, and it's you see him run towards the car when the two guys get out. He runs towards the car and then he goes to hide, but then we get this wide angle, like almost aerial shot, and Blade's nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, well, obviously most of the scenes in first person to save budget.
Well, yeah, but like it looked like he was ducking around behind a tire, but apparently he just crawled under the car.
Yeah, and I guess this scene also makes it pretty clear how campy this movie is supposed to be, both with the humorous things it does, like running across the piano and the peeping through the keyhole, but there's even a point where a door hits Blade in the face and it starts playing like a bird sound effect as he's dizzy.
From the opening, Shredder Khan is keeping Look out the window. We wouldn't see him again for a long time, but they did some really good puppet work with him.
Oh, is that the one that's staring out the window?
Yeah, and keeps like turning around to make sure that Toulon gets to finish painting his puppet before.
Okay, yeah. I didn't know that one's name because, he's only in that one short scene, but apparently that one was an actual puppet, and it's used in a lot of plays, and it's called The Magician or The Alchemist, which is pretty appropriate considering where this movie's plot goes about magicians and alchemy, so just a nice Easter egg, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, but as far as the puppet itself goes, we wouldn't see Shredder Khan again until Puppet Master X. That would be the next time we would see him pop up. I don't think he was meant to serve as anything more than an Easter egg at this point.
Well, of course, the Black Hats try to get to Andre Toulon, presumably because of his secrets of bringing puppets to life, but before they can reach him, he shoots himself in the head after hiding the puppets away. And then we cut to modern day, and this is where we'll meet our human cast for the film, where all of them simultaneously receive a sort of premonition or psychic message that informs them to go to this hotel. Mm-hmm. So, first of these is
Alex Whitaker, the main character. He's a dream precognitive. Then we have Dana Hadley. She's
the White Witch.
Yeah, she's kind of played off when she's introduced as a carnival huckster, but then she gets the real vision.
Yeah, she's one of my favorites. She's a sultry-voiced and almost perpetually drunk fortune teller that has visions. She's one of the more supernatural ones because she's constantly using herbs to try to affect people's auras, carries around a taxidermy dog in a suitcase, a Pekingese, I think. And she's burning talismans, handing people chicken feet, but all this witch stuff, but she's a sultry southern woman.
Well, like her protection spells later on actually keep the puppets from going into one of of the rooms, I believe. Her introduction also features a cameo from Barbara Crampton. It's always nice to see her in a movie.
And then I think the next two we meet at the same time, we meet Frank Forrester and Carissa Stemford. Not Clarissa, Carissa. It took me a while to pick up on that.
Yeah, she has the power of psychometry.
Well, they both do, yeah. These are the more scientific psychics. They're both in a lab with machines hooked up to somebody as they're trying to test what they can read off people.
Yeah, they specialize in sexual psychic.
Well, it seems like that's specifically Carissa's thing, because Frank, most of his just seem pretty neutral. He'll pick up a photo and see a scene or things like that, but Carissa's are almost all in this scene. Frank's telling a girl to imagine sexual fantasies and trying to get Carissa to pick up on them. And then they'll have scenes later where Carissa gets in a bed and starts feeling celebrities that had sex there. Or she'll get in an elevator and feel a sexual assault that happened there. All of hers seem very sexual.
Yeah. He comes off a little creepy early on in the film. Like, his introduction is creepy as hell.
Yeah, well, he's always seems like he's creeping on women. He's like, amusingly, Carissa's constantly like trying to get with him because of all of these sexual visions she's picking up, getting her going. But then Frank, amusingly, almost always seems interested in other women, and he's constantly telling her to be serious or focus on the work. They have a fun chemistry.
Yeah, and these two are both like so passive aggressive against the rest of the cast in this film. They bitch about Dana being present.
Yeah, all of these come together to create a really like fun cast with nice dynamics.
Yeah.
Alex is constantly trying to like be the peacekeeper while Dana's constantly trying to stir up stuff, so you have those conflicting forces. And then all four of these people are just very individualistic and opposed to each other. But they all do come together eventually to this hotel that they were summoned to by Neil Gallagher, and they meet his wife, Megan Gallagher, who she just reminds me so much of Shelley Duvall, the wife mother from The Shining. I kept thinking of her every time Megan was on screen.
Really? I get a Kirsty vibe from her, from Hellraiser. You get like a heavy Kirsty vibe.
I don't think I remember what Kirsty looks like enough to comment. And the last cast member is the sharp-tongued maid, Teresa.
Yeah, she's also, like, oddly obsessive with Neil. Like, really, really obsessive. I don't know, maybe Neil had a granny fetish. I don't know. She's in love. But, like you said, the movie starts off with a bang. Toulon literally kills himself. Me personally, if I've got an army of puppets there, I'm not going to spend my last moments on Earth dry brushing the hair on one of my puppets. And 2, I'm going to hide in the closet, and when the guys come in the room, Pinhead shuts the door, and army of puppets killed him.
Well, you say that, but it kind of seems like, while this movie doesn't really go anywhere with Toulon, it seems to sort of hint that maybe he had a plan, because we learn that Neil Gallagher shot himself just like Andre Toulon did, and Neil Gallagher, will come to find, had learned the secret of the puppets, which is pretty much the direction that part 2 went with.
Early on, we get a scene that freaked me out when I was a kid. It reminds me of a scene from Phantasm 2, I believe, where the tall man gets stabbed and they pull out whatever they stab him with, and there's like this yellow gook on it. When they all go to see Neil's body, and the White Witch takes out the pin, and she's like, "Oh, I need to be sure," and sticks him and pulls it out, and there's like the green snot-looking stuff dripping off of it. That creeped me out as a kid.
It suddenly occurs to me, they said he shot himself, but I felt like one of them should have been trying to find the wound. I don't recall him having any clear... well, whatever.
Yeah. Me either.
Anyways, everyone's surprised that Neil got married because he was so focused on his work, but it turns out that his wife owns the place. And this is why I sort of said it had that sort of gothic horror murder mystery vibe, is because it has so many disparate threads going on. You have like this zany cast of characters that are staying at the hotel, and they're all very in it for themselves and have their own goals, so any one of them could be behind things. And you have the whole thing about how Neil Gallagher shot himself in the exact same way as Toulon did, so what does that mean? scene, and his wife actually owned the place, so maybe he married her because of something having to go with the place. And Carissa gets a vision of Neil raping some other girl in an elevator. You don't know where that's going. And Megan says that after they got married, that Neil did a bunch of construction on the hotel, then locked himself away for a year to focus on his work. You don't know what that new construction's about. And then I think Dana's the one that, the White Witch is the one that says that Gallagher had worked with all of them to trace down some Egyptian rituals for giving life to inanimate objects, and that had led them to Andre Toulon, one of the last alchemists in the world. And then you also have, in addition to all that, Neil's corpse keeps appearing in various rooms, but always inanimate and never seems to actually do anything, although there is that fun time when he appears in Dana's room and is holding a whiskey glass.
And then when she turns around, his eyes are open, and she does her little magic dance, her magic shimmy up to him, and closes his eyes with magic.
Yeah, so there's a lot of fun stuff going on in this film that kind of, if you just came in this movie being like, I'm going to watch a movie with puppets, let's see the puppets, you're going to be disappointed. But if you weren't expecting that, and it's just like this fun murder mystery that has these puppets in the background, I think it works really good as that. And speaking of the puppets, this is around the time they make their debut, once everybody's made it to their rooms for the night and trying to figure out what they're going to do about this situation and why and how Neil summoned them all here with that psychic message. It cuts to his coffin, and Pinhead crawls out of it, who's our first active puppet in the movie after Blade in the intro. He's sort of a carnival strongman type, most huge upper torso, and amusingly
large fist.
Giant. Yeah. In many shots, it's the puppets mounted on the shoulders of an actual woman with dwarfism, and that's actually her hands doing the punching. And he kills Teresa, the maid,
with a fireplace poker.
Mm-hmm.
It's a classic. Never goes out of style.
Yeah, it's a nice scene. It kept making me think of Child's Play a bit, how so much of the scene is she knows somebody's in the room, but doesn't know where they are, and it's just her creeping around trying to find them. Every time he loses aggro and she goes back to trying to get her work done, he'll hit some keys on the piano to draw her back out that way, Solid Snake style. And from there, it just sort of turns into a murder fest. I can't remember, do they find Teresa's body?
I don't believe so. No, because she shows back up at the end.
That's right. It cuts from her murder to you hear a scream, so you think it's going to be that they found the body, but that's actually just turns out to be the first time that they found Neil's body moved, and Teresa doesn't seem to come up, which it had scenes earlier of her like staring at jewelry people brought with them, so I suppose they could have imagined she just tried to steal some stuff and run. But from here, the movie just sort of rapid fire goes into slasher mode. Each puppet gets its time to kill someone, so Pinhead just killed Teresa, then you get Carissa and Frank trying to have their S&M session.
And back to what you said earlier about the whole Frank Carissa dynamic. When they first come into their room, that's the perfect example. Like, she's like, oh, celebrities have had sex on this bed, and she's like going into this orgasmic rapture, and Frank's basically like, would you shut up already?
And she gives them this very exasperated, annoyed look that I enjoyed a lot.
She gets really, in my opinion, one of the worst kills in this movie. I mean,
it's the most, I don't know, I mean, everyone else's deaths are really drawn out.
Yeah.
She just leans over the bed, and then Tunneler just runs out from under the bed and drills right into her head, and she's out in seconds.
Yeah, but later when you see her, he drilled up through her face, so, like, he started, like, around her jaw and went up till it killed her. Like, so, I mean, ugh.
And then amusingly, I don't think it shows Tunneler any in that scene after that, but Frank's still tied up on the bed, and Leech Woman crawls up onto him and starts vomiting leeches all over him, in one of my favorite scenes.
Be fair, she does have a good amount of foreplay with him beforehand, and we get the classic horror movie trope where people suddenly lose the ability to distinguish screams of pleasure from screams of agony and death. Even in the case of Frank and Carissa, you can tell a death knell from orgasmic pleasure.
Oh, yeah. Because it has all those shots of everyone else in the hotel, like, being annoyed by all their, like, loud moans. And then when they're being murdered and screaming, all the other guests are just like, give it a rest already.
I guess we're supposed to assume that her super leeches, she just finally drops enough on them that they suck him dry, I guess. I mean, I don't think later when we see him there's any other wounds on him, except for the little marks on his chest.
Yeah, I can only assume that there's supposed to be some kind of super leeches that drink up a ridiculous amount of blood. But, I mean, obviously they're animated puppets, so there's a supernatural element at play here. But for the most part, they all obey laws of physics. They all just do very mechanical murders. Leech Woman's the only one that somehow, like, produces living creatures from within her body and then vomits them out on people.
Well, they do a bit of playing with physics in this movie, much like Child's Play. You know, sometimes it's implied that Chucky, has the density greater than a doll, because without that density, he doesn't have the strength to physically hold down a person like he has done. The same thing with Pinhead, because this is my favorite. The next kill is my favorite one in this movie. It's oh God, you're right. It is drawn out, and it starts off horribly. I mean, Pinhead literally just like squeezes Dana's leg until it cracks, and that's just
Yeah, and then after that you get just a prolonged scene of her
trying to crawl away.
Yeah. And he keeps getting on top of her and then just like punching her in the face over and over.
Yes.
I mean, it's almost comical. It could have been very comical. I'm surprised it doesn't register that way to me. I could totally understand it registering that way to someone, but I'm just surprised. You don't see too many movies that just show a woman getting punched in the face that much.
I know, like every time he catches up to her, she just like turns and looks up and he knocks the crap out of her.
Yeah, she doesn't bruise any or anything though, and like you were saying, it feels odd every time she's just getting wailed on in the face, and then she just picks him up and
throws him
across
like
the
he's
room
nothing,
like a rag doll.
Yeah.
Maybe those punches didn't actually hurt. Maybe that's why there's no bruising.
Maybe he doesn't have that density. He's strong enough to crack a leg manually.
Well, that's he's using her own like strength against her. That's like a grapple hold where you're like leveraging different parts of the body against each other.
Yeah, but if you're strong enough to break a bone barehanded, your punch should like knock out some teeth, I'm thinking. I mean, it's hard to break a human bone.
But Pinhead already killed Teresa, so he can't have this kill, so instead he just chases her into the elevator, and then Blade comes out of the top and slices her throat and finishes her off, just like she'd had a vision of earlier.
Yeah, he cop-blocked Pinhead. He's a kill stiller.
It's a bit of a shame that Blade, I think he's like what most people consider the main puppet. I mean, he has his own movie now, but he does the least in this movie outside of that intro sequence.
Yeah, he's a spy, and, well, later on he actually uses his hook. For one of the few times he ever actually utilizes his hook hand.
To hold the elevator door open?
Well, and to stretch open Neil's mouth on the final kill.
So that's, each puppet has killed one person at this point, and all we have left alive in the hotel now are Alex and Megan, and Jester is the only puppet left, so you'd think he'd kill Alex, but Jester's completely useless, so...
Well, he does what he does best, and that's react to the situation around him. Just off the top of my head, I can only think of one time he ever killed anyone, and I believe he just hit someone in the head with a hammer. I'm not even sure if he gets the kill.
Yeah, well, in the later movies, they sort of make him almost like the heart of the team. It's like, while everyone else is murdering, he's just like chilling back at the home base and just usually whimpering or looking concerned. In this, though, he actually makes, like, sinister smiles.
He's like the gauge for the puppets' emotions. He's their emoticon.
Oh, yeah, because he's the only one that can change his face, yeah, so he has to be there to let you know how they're feeling, I guess.
And I think it's kind of cool how, when you look at his head from different angles, he's got kind of a supernatural element, too, because there's way more emotions he can convey than what would fit on that one little head.
Yeah, I guess we should say, for anyone that hasn't seen it, so his face is sort of broken up into 3 vertical layers. There's the mouth layer, or I guess it's just the mouth and the eyes. The rest doesn't really matter. But the 3 pieces of his head will swivel around in different directions and then stop, and whenever they stop, he'll have a new expression, like a He-Man tri-face or something.
Yes, and then even though his chin doesn't move, when he frowns, his frown extends onto the chin piece. But, it's a small price to pay. He's an amusing character.
It's no Quintesson.
Quintesson, you saved me. It was an accident!
But yeah, so at this point it gets down to just Alex and Megan. But at this point I don't think either of them know that the others are dead. So since Alex has been the most sympathetic towards Megan, everybody else has been kind of whatever about her. She confides in him, pointing out that Toulon and her husband both shot themselves, and she leads him to a hidden room where the dance scene that was read off of the photo earlier replays, but then that just turns out to have been a dream. Which Alex has prophetic dreams, so makes sense. Then he wakes up, pulls off his bedsheet, and under his bedsheets are the 3 severed heads of his friends smiling at him.
What's happening, Alex?
And then he wakes up again.
Yeah, dream within a dream.
And this is fun because it's a jump scare, but it's also his prophetic power working technically, because he doesn't know they're dead yet, but his dream just told him that they are.
Yep.
So that's really good. I actually really love that scene. That scene is actually kind of unsettling. That's one of the few actually scary bits in it to me. And then once he wakes up again, Megan comes to his room like she did the first time to lead him around. And I really like this layering they're doing with dreams within dreams and his power. She reveals to him Andre Toulon's diary, where it says, "Today I gave them life. They mirror the soul of their master. With me they are harmless, but I fear what they are capable of if placed in the wrong hands." Which this kind of reminded me of an earlier scene in the movie where Carissa asks Frank what he would do if he had the power, and he says that he would use it to rule the world. So this seems like it sort of sets up to me that you have to be an alchemist or magician, or in this case, a psychic, in order to be able to control the puppet.
Well, later on, we just have a computer programmer.
Yeah. Well, the later movies move away from the puppets. They make this less literal, where it's not the puppets attending to somebody's will. They make it where instead they're individuals, and it's just the master convincing them to help them. And at this point, they go back downstairs, and Alex has a vision of his 3 friends eating in the dining room, and this is his power telling him that's where they are, but then when he actually goes in the room, it's just their corpses at the table, so that's another nice use of his power I liked. I really wish they kind of kept with this in the series, and the later movies could have done a lot of interesting visuals with psychic powers, but oh well. And at this point, Neil Gallagher presents himself. He's up and moving about, and he's just fine. He was the mastermind behind all this, because Puppet Master 1 is not about the puppets, it's about the puppet master, which we finally get now is Neil Gallagher. And he basically called everyone here because they helped him investigate the Egyptian stuff and learn about Andre Toulon. And now that he's finally mastered Toulon's secrets, he just wanted to kill off everybody else that had any chance of knowing what it was he was doing or how he got this power.
I hate to poke holes in his theory here. He says, y'all would eventually find out. Well, obviously not, because he had known about this for at least a year at this point, and the only reason any of them found out was because he invited them here. And if you're immortal, all you have to do is outlive your friends.
He probably just didn't want to wait that long.
Yeah, I imagine so. In a hurry to live forever.
Unfortunately, now that he's killed off all but the last people he needs to, he gets overconfident and ruins everything. He says he's sick of experimenting on dolls, throws Jester across the room, then he mentions to Megan, she said earlier that after her parents died that he had comforted her and been there for her through it, which was obviously just a plot to get her house, which was the hotel where Andre Toulon hid the puppets.
And he killed him.
Yeah, he reveals that they were the first people he experimented on. Really gives it more gothic horror vibes also, actually, I guess, with the whole him marrying her just to get her estate and having secretly killed her parents. Oh yeah, and then zombie Teresa shows up looking like Bride of Frankenstein, because I guess he reanimated her.
Well, after Alex gets the crap beat out of him.
And have the nice line, "It's time to die, so you can live forever."
And as you mentioned, he, of course, makes the cardinal mistake you can't do in these movies, and that's throw Jester around. And there would be later films where they actually turn on the master because of actions he takes.
Well, it kind of seems like maybe the puppets actually thought he was a good guy, and he had just lied to them about what these other people were like, and that was why the puppets were okay with killing them. Because when he says, so he threw Jester, that's fine. The puppets look angry about that. Makes sense because he's attacking one of them. But then when he says that he actually killed Megan's parents, the puppets look horrified and aghast at that also.
Yes. I love how emotive they can make these puppets without, like Blade, for instance, like his spike eyes. You can tell when he's upset or surprised or interested because of the limited grunts and groans. He'll be like, and his eye spikes will shoot out, and you know he's like interested in something. Really good practical puppetry effects in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's sad we don't see these kind of films much anymore, except for primarily the Puppet Master movies.
Yeah, well, they had just like dolls, they had a whole bunch of different puppets in this. They had mechanical ones that were built for different things they needed the puppets to do. So
yeah,
there wasn't like the one blade puppet or the one pinhead puppet. They had the one they used for stop motion, the one they used for mechanical effects in this scene where he needs to be more active, the one they use for this scene where Leech Woman needs to vomit up a leech.
Yeah.
But yeah, at this point it has the classic and one of the best horror movie finale tropes you can have, which is the minions turn against the master. And all the puppets throw Neil Gallagher into the elevator.
This is when Pinhead gets his
Yeah.
head popped off. Pinhead actually beats his ass into the elevator.
He says, "You're the puppet. Pop." Oh, and he actually calls him "you brainless little pinhead" in that scene. Because it kind of seems like they didn't have real names. The credits names are just so the viewers know what they are, but then those ended up becoming their actual names with time.
And then he tries to climb out of the elevator.
Yeah, and it kind of mirrors when Dana got killed because Pinhead or Blade dropped out of the top of the elevator to slit her throat, and now Blade drops out of the top of the elevator.
Well, he cuts his fingers off first.
He cuts his fingers off, and then he does like a chef, and after he cuts them off, he just uses his knife to swipe them down into the elevator. And they've got green goop coming out of them, which I guess is the reanimator goo. I guess it turns out that Andre Toulon just developed the same reanimator juice that Herbert West did. I guess his works better technically.
Yeah. No explosive intestines.
Yeah, and then it's kind of contrived, but they find a way to have all the puppets get in on it. Blade cuts his fingers off, then
Tunneler drills into his calf.
Pinhead holds him down. Blade
uses his hook.
Shoves his blade hand into his hand and uses his hook to hold
like
his mouth
I said,
open.
one of the few times he ever actually uses his hook hand.
And then Tunneler just drilling into his head at the same time as Leech Woman's vomiting leeches into his mouth.
The super leech. Oh god, that one is hideous. It's like the size is larger than his mouth.
Yeah, back when I had only seen some of the Puppet Master 3 and 4 and 5 maybe, at some point I caught a clip of part 1 or 2 and it had Leech Woman, and I was like, why have I never seen this one before? And it turns out she gets killed super early in part 2 because apparently the studios backing the movie thought she was too gross and told them to stop using her after this one.
Well, but they bring her back in 3.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, the Elsa. 3 is when it establishes...
Well, I know they established that she was actually his wife.
Yeah, well, she gets killed in the movie, and that's when he creates Leech Woman. Because part 3 is the one that develops the lore where the puppets are actually basically the souls of people that Toulon knew that he puts into the puppets as part of the process. And when Elsa dies in the movie, he makes Leech Woman in Puppet Master 3. I do find it pertinent to mention here that despite what the puppets have done to Neil, it is not total destruction, which, according to him...
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing.
You can't kill me. That would require complete destruction of this vessel, and that's something you're not capable of.
Yeah, I was actually about to say that exact same thing. Yeah, because while he's getting his head drilled into and a knife stuck in his hand and a leech is vomited in his mouth, what actually takes him out is Pinhead just twists his neck. And that just seems so odd that that's accepted as the death. I mean, maybe we can assume that the puppets continued to dismantle him from there and it just didn't show it. Because after this, it just sort of cuts to Megan sobbing outside the elevator at the sight of her evil undead husband being dismembered, I guess.
Yeah. It seems like a gallon of gas and a pack of matches would be just as effective and much more efficient.
Well, maybe, I haven't seen all of the later ones in the series, so maybe this happens at some point, but if they could just totally use this as an excuse to bring him back as a villain again.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
But the ending from there is a bit odd. It cuts to the next day, and it cuts directly from that scene of the puppets with Neil in the elevator and Alex and Megan outside. It cuts directly from that to Alex and Megan calmly getting up the next day and her seeing Alex to his cab, and they both just seem pretty chill. I don't know what they're going to tell anyone about this, but after Alex leaves, Megan's holding Dana's taxidermy dog, and then it comes to life in her hands, which seems to hint that she had also mastered Gallagher's magic. I don't know if this was the next day and this is supposed to hint that she was the actual mastermind, and maybe her parents actually got this hotel because they knew what the deal with it was. Or maybe time was just supposed to have passed between and maybe her and Alex looked into it. I mean, I'm overthinking it. It's just there to be fun and cute, but...
Well, I think he says that it's been like a week or two since...
Well, that's enough time to learn how to reanimate the dead. Yeah.
Well, you have the diary, I guess.
I guess.
As long as you can find the ingredients and you just shoot them into something.
It does end, though, with that last shot of her and the dog going up the stairs.
Yeah, she sets the dog down and it's like hopping up the stairs. What happened to Teresa?
That's a good... I mean, she's still the maid, I guess.
Yeah, I guess she's just going to keep her on. She's the new puppet master. She can obsess over Megan now.
And that is a good way for the film to end, because you end the puppet master on showing the new puppet master.
Yes.
Really good movie. If you're going in it just for the puppets, you might be disappointed, although...
You'll want the later films for that.
Yeah, the puppets are really good. Like I said, they're designed and animated by David Allen Productions. I kind of skimmed over him when mentioning the other things, because he didn't work as much on them, but David Allen was the chief puppeteer on 1985's Young Sherlock Holmes, 1987's Batteries Not Included, and 1988's Willow. He also did stop-motion work for The Howling, Ghoulies 2, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, visual effects for The Stuff, and Dolls and Robot Jocks, and that's just a sample of what he's done.
That's a technology that we're losing. We don't have practical effects. And I know it's more cost-effective to do CGI, I guess, but it's still, even in the movies with the best CGI, it's very easy to jar you out of immersion, because you can tell when something's CGI.
And he would work on a lot of the Charles Band projects. I think David Allen worked on all of them through 5 and Demonic Toys and Prehysteria. And I think he passed away after that. He did have a lifelong stop-motion project he was working on called Primeval that he unfortunately died before he could finish it. But apparently people have been working on it on and off ever since, just whenever budget constraints would allow them to. And I don't think it's coming out at this point, but I saw Full Moon was actually showing that they were finally going to release it this year with a protege of David Allen's finishing it up. But I guess at this point it seems like that might be delayed till 2021. I'll be interested in seeing that whenever it comes out. You can see trailers for Primeval online.
I'm curious if he did the effects for the minions in Subspecies, in the Subspecies films.
I believe he did work on Subspecies, I'm not sure.
It would make sense.
And Kenneth J Hall, who wrote the original draft for this, like I said, he was mostly a makeup and effects guy as well. I think he just owns some company called Total Fab in Los Angeles now that makes like mostly foam-based outfits and costumes and like mascot suits, things like that. He did the original draft, and I did find an interview in which it was said that original draft, the psychics weren't in it at all. That was added. His original draft, all the people that were being gathered to the place were all more in the line with Dana the White Witch. They were all just magicians of different types.
While we're talking about Alan, I just checked into it, and it's actually pretty cool. In Subspecies, originally, all the minion effects were people in suits, and the director actually brought David Allen in to, help him with the film. He wanted to make it, quote, more magical looking. And so he actually built these foam rubber puppets with metal skeletons, and he built rod puppets to use for these scenes because they could move in ways that the people in the suits couldn't. That's pretty cool because it works. It makes the effect much better. I love the little minions in Subspecies.
It's been a long time since I've seen any Subspecies. That's actually something I'd be really keen on doing an episode on sometime soon.
Well, I have the set. And I really need to get Full Moon features anyways, because I would love to have a Blu-ray collection. I think they just released a limited run of the Puppet Master Toulon case Blu-ray collection. It comes with 3 vinyl figures. I think it's Blade, Torch. I can't remember the other one, but that would be nice. That was a limited release, and that's going to be hard to get your hands on if you didn't get a chance to pre-order it.
At this point, like I said, Puppet Master came out in 1989. I think the most recent movie in the series was 2018's Puppet Master The Littlest Reich, although this year we did have the standalone Blade movie I mentioned, which I haven't seen yet, but I hope to soon. Well, I guess that concludes all I have to say about the original Puppet Master. A lot of people don't seem to like this one because of the lack of the puppets in it. I see a lot of people saying it only has X minutes of puppets in it, but I think that's kind of disingenuous because I think that's cutting out all the time. That's the people in a room with the puppet sneaking around the puppet, or the shots of just the person reacting to the puppet. But anyways, to me, the puppets are they're cool.
They're not really the focus.
I would like this movie even if it didn't have the puppet, and the puppets are a nice bonus, but if the puppets were any more relevant in this one, it would detract away from the whole murder mystery aspect, and I actually really like how that's done in this, because all the actors are good, all the characters they're portraying are all really interesting and comical and have nice interactions. So this is actually this and later Puppet Master movies are so different, it's almost not really comparable.
I completely agree. The characters, their dynamics, the almost gothic atmosphere of the film. I mean, the hotel set itself is very evocative. It gives you a very creepy feel, this rundown hotel. I don't mind how little the puppets are active in this film. Definitely, once they become more active in later films, they have a good justification for it, but I'm with you. I believe that the puppets being more central in this film would kind of counteract the overall plot, which I think works just fine.
I think that's all I have to say about it. Does that wrap it up for you as well?
Last thing I would say is that this movie could only be improved in one way, and that's if Six Shooter was in it.
Alright, well, I guess I am curious for any viewers listening, if you could. We considered doing a Puppet Master the whole series episode, but decided it would be better to just do one movie so we could really deep dive on it. But yeah, let us know whether you'd prefer this format, or if you would prefer more less in-depth but more broad overviews of series in the future.
Or, we could always do broad overviews and then later on go in and break down the specific films. And I will definitely say that I appreciate all the interaction we've had so far, all the feedback we've had so far from various people. It's greatly appreciated and it helps us. So thank you very much. To anyone listening to this now, if this is the first episode you hear, or if you've been with us since the beginning.
This concludes today's episode of Here is the Horror. Subscribe and review Here is the Horror for free on the podcast service of your choice and on YouTube. You can also visit our website, here'sthehorror.com, and follow Here's the Horror on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
And you can also follow us at facebook.com/hereisthehorror, on Instagram at hereisthehorror, and on Twitter at hereisthehorror.
Have anything you want to say about horror films, games, or novels? Any topics that you would like us to discuss? Questions, comments, and suggestions can be sent via email to here'sthehorror@gmail.com. Please consider subscribing to Here's the Horror on Patreon. Every little bit helps to support the podcast, and patrons gain access to bonus episodes and more. The opening song is Nightmare Machine by Kevin MacLeod. The interstitial songs are Supernatural Radio by Kevin MacLeod, The Visitor by Shane Ivers, and Engulfed by the Night by Darren Curtis. The closing song is Dealing with the Devil by Darren Curtis.
And as always, thank you very much for listening, and remember, stay horrified. God, sniffles. Tentatively.
There's not that gritty realism that Pyramid Hearst and the other cast member is the shark, and the last cast member is the shark.
How much did you hear of what I said?
Very little. I heard every third syllable, something about dry brushing hair in a closet.